So this was our second trip. The first order of business was actually to figure out a place to park the car on the little one-lane dirt road. We ended up finding a place where we could mostly just clear away all of the soil that had been kicked up by the bulldozer that created the dirt road. So we didn't damage any plants, yay, although bulldozing. So that took a long time, but then we were able to pull over to the side of the road for the first time, which was very exciting. And it was definitely a lot hotter this time. I think it got up to 76 degrees, and I don't think, I know. And so even the lower areas were starting to look a lot drier than they had the previous visit. So it was really too late in the spring to plant, whether tree seedlings or baby grasses or baby wildflowers. Even seeds, that's best done in the fall before the rainy season and not right at the start of the hot season. So we started by digging holes, trying to come up with a way to get more water to come into the soil. Not because it was the beginning of the wet season, but because why not? In the fall we'd be busy planting things, and so it seemed like this was a better time to start digging. There's a couple different ideas about how to get water to come into the soil. For instance, if you are a sepulcher on a hillside in Austria, you might want to dig it off contour, swales off contour, so that you're directing water, because if you're trying to keep all that water in one place in one swale on contour, it will break and then you'll have a landslide. If you're a permaculture people in Australia, you might want to have it on contour to keep as much as possible right in one place. If you are Mr. Piri in Zimbabwe, you might want to dig holes because there's even less, it's more of a desert, and you're trying to gather it all in one place. So different people have done different things, and we didn't know which would be best for this particular site. So we started by digging 3 holes. They were 12 inches, between 12 and 16 inches in diameter, and about 18 inches deep. 18 inches deep. And we had the idea to use some of the dead sagebrush branches as a way of putting things that could burn into the soil. Because if they're in the soil, then they will help retain water in the soil. If they're on top of the soil, they will burn. And we've had a lot of problems with the wildflowers in eastern Washington. So we dug holes, we filled them with branches, we then filled them with mulch, and we happen to have received donations of coffee chaff, which is the husk around a coffee bean. So we use that, and it's again organic material, which the idea is that'll help gather any kind of water and funnel it down deeper. Because organic material holds water better than, say, sand, which, well, I mean, obviously sand would work too, but we didn't have sand. But it definitely holds it better than concrete. And so trying to get water to find a path of least resistance to go into the soil and to stay in the soil rather than running across the soil is what we're looking for. So after we had done that, we went up to the high part and we repeated that, only there you're not dealing with much topsoil. It's a different kind of soil, and it's mostly lots and lots of little rocks that are just sort of held together with sand. So yeah, it took a long time, and the holes we were able to dig were more like 4 inches across and 4 inches deep. They were very, very small, and even then you're just prying rock after rock after rock and rock after, and there were some plants. I think when you're digging holes, the important thing is to make sure you're digging in an area where there isn't much. So that was much easier up above than down below. We didn't want to damage the terrain, which was so fragile. It seemed like lots and lots of smaller holes might be better than a couple really, really large holes. So we're still getting a sense of what works best for different areas, but that was what we accomplished on that trip. In terms of new plants we've discovered on the property, the most exciting one is called bitterroot, which grows out of nothing. There's nothing there, and all of a sudden there's a little teeny tiny flower. It wasn't blooming when we were there, but we were looking forward to that. Moll is the one doing all the research on these plants, figuring out all their Latin names, so if there are Latin names, that's because she knows what they all are. The other ones we saw were timeleaf buckwheat, Spalding's milkfetch, which was pretty darn amazing and not very common, and a native paintbrush is right next to it. And then some that we're still figuring out. The green leafy plant that we saw last time, which didn't have a flower, now has a nice yellow flower. That doesn't mean we know what it is. It's probably a hawkweed, but we haven't identified it yet. And then there are white plant 1 and 2, that is the Latin, which will be identified as soon as we can. That's it!